This is rental car number 94, and today I'm driving the 2018 Ram 1500. Now, this pickup truck can be customized in a ton of different ways, so let me be just a little bit more specific. The trim level on this one is the Bighorn. It's also a crew cab extended cab model, and it has a 6-foot 4-inch box, the bed of the pickup truck. And to make things better, this is the 4x4, and it has the 5.7 liter Hemi V8 engine. When you combine all those factors, this pickup truck MSRPs for around $43,000. All right, so now that we know what we're actually looking at, let's start by going inside the truck, popping the hood, and taking a look at what 5.7 liter Hemi V8 looks like. All right, so here it is in all its glory. This is a 5.7 liter Hemi V8 engine with an 8-speed automatic transmission. This thing kicks out an impressive 395 horsepower, and you're looking at a 0 to 60 time around 7 seconds. It's tough to be specific because there's so many different trim levels and options you can throw on this truck, but 7 seconds, I think, is pretty good for something that has a maximum towing capacity of 10,620 pounds. Another thing I wanted to mention quickly is that you do have hydraulics to keep the hood open, and that's a good touch because this thing's pretty high off the ground. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall and I still had to reach pretty high just to close the hood. But you're probably taller than me, so it probably doesn't matter. Anyway, let's talk about fuel efficiency. Not too bad on this truck, especially considering how big it is. 14 miles per gallon in the city, 20 on the highway, with a 26-gallon fuel tank that can be upgradable to 32 gallons. If you want to pay a little extra, and that fuel cap is located on the driver's side of the vehicle. Alright, so I threw a bunch of numbers at you. I'm sorry about that. It doesn't really mean a lot to me, if I'm being honest. I'm not much of a spec guy. What I really care about is what it feels like to actually drive a truck like this. And I gotta say, the Ram 1500 is kind of fun to drive. You sit way up high in the road, which I find nice, especially considering most of my driving is done in tiny sedans. Also, acceleration is pretty decent, especially when you consider how big and heavy this truck is. Another thing I really like is going around corners in this truck. I thought, because it's so high off the ground and so large, that it was going to feel like it was pulling me out of the lane when I was turning. But that's not true at all. This thing really hugs the road well. I felt really secure going around tight corners. I even accelerated a little bit more than I usually do. All in all, I gotta say, I got no complaints when it comes to driving the Ram 1500. Honestly, it's a ton of fun. Alright, so that's my quick take on performance, which is basically 2 big thumbs up for the Ram 1500. Anyway, let's jump inside this truck so we can take a look at all the fun features that you're going to get to enjoy if you take this thing out for a spin. Alright, let's talk seats just for a quick minute. First off, super large and comfortable. I had no problems driving this thing for hours and hours. There's also electronic controls to adjust the seat in a number of different ways, including lumbar support. And then another nice feature I've been kind of playing around lately in a lot of my rentals is that the seat belt is actually adjustable up by your shoulder, and that's nice. You can get it nice and comfortable if you're willing to play around with things just a little bit. Alright, but enough about seats and seat belts. Let's move on by talking about the key fob. It's a good shape, pretty light, which is not my preference, but it feels like it's made out of nice materials. 4 buttons on it, lock, unlock. That circular button you see right there with the number 2 on it is your remote start feature, and then a panic button in red on the top. And the panic button is actually located on the key portion of the fob because this is actually a plastic key that has to be inserted into the dash, just like a normal key, to turn the vehicle on. Alright, so now we got the vehicle on, let's switch gears a bit and talk about the steering wheel. There's a number of buttons here, starting with the ones on the left-hand side. These interact with your phone, and then those arrow keys you see interact with the digital display in the gauge cluster. On the right-hand side, you have your cruise controls. These work great. And then wrapped around on the back of the steering wheel are your volume rockers. I really love these. Super intuitive, and it makes it really easy to adjust the volume while you're driving. And then up above, you have a nice-sized gauge cluster with an enormous digital screen right in the center. So this may be one of my favorite digital displays ever on a vehicle. Not only is there a ton of information that you can view about the car while you're driving it, but also a lot of it is customizable, especially the things located in the 4 corners of the display. So you can actually set it up where the temperature is in the upper left-hand corner, or if you prefer in the lower right-hand corner, or the clock, or the amount of gas you have left until empty, all kinds of stuff. I love that you can customize the display. I don't know why other manufacturers aren't following suit. It's great. I love it. All right, so obviously I love the gauge cluster, and I think you will too, but I don't want to stay on this topic for too long, so let's shift our focus down to the left-hand side of the steering wheel. You're going to find all your standard buttons down here. So you have your window controls and your door locks, along with your side view mirror controls located right here. And then up on the dash you have a small dial to control the headlights. Essentially you keep it either on auto, off, or you can turn on and off the fog lights. The dial you see a little bit below there controls the intensity of the light in the gauge cluster. And then below there, towards the floor, you have a push pedal parking brake. This one's a little bit different that I've been using lately in that it has a small plastic lever you have to pull up on to release the brake. And since we're on this side of the truck, let's quickly talk about side view mirrors. These are a good size. They also work well. Visibility was not an issue for me while I was driving the Ram 1500. And although this truck doesn't come with blindside detection, there are additional turn signal indicators located on the back of the side view mirror, which I think is a good thing, especially for a vehicle this large. All right, so let's jump back into the vehicle and look up. Up here you're going to find a number of controls. The first two I want to talk about are the lights to illuminate the cabin. These work great, just gentle pushes to turn the lights on. A little below there are the controls to adjust the rear window. Again, these work really well. I like that the window opens and closes at a pretty good clip. I kind of hate having to wait a long, annoying time for the thing to close. And then behind there you have three buttons marked 1, 2, and 3 in Roman numerals to control your garage doors, should you have more than one. And the last thing I want to mention up here is the rear view mirror with an automatic dimmer feature. There's also two buttons located on here, one for assist and one for SOS. And below the rear view mirror is where things start to get a little bit more interesting. There's a small storage cutout right here that's perfect for a cell phone or maybe a toll pass. And then below there is your 8.4-inch digital touchscreen. I like this quite a bit. Not only is it large, but it's also organized really nicely. There are dedicated menu buttons along the bottom of the display that make it really easy to navigate through all the menu structures. I also like that when you touch the screen, a small red circle appears showing you exactly where you touched the display. I don't know why, but I think this is a really nice design choice and it makes the screen feel that much more expensive. One small complaint I have is that some of the climate controls are actually embedded in the touchscreen itself, so you do have to navigate to the climate tab before you can adjust these. But everything is organized so nicely that it's not much of a chore to do, and after I drove the truck for about a day, I got used to it and it was no big deal. Another nice feature is that you do get a rear view camera with a pretty wide view, so it's actually usable. And if you're curious, that rear view camera is embedded into the latch on the back of the door for the bed of the truck. And below the touchscreen are the climate controls. I mentioned before that some of the controls are embedded in the touchscreen, but really you have everything that's important right here. I also like that these knobs have rubber on them, so they're very easy to grip. Also, all the controls are really large, so they're really easy to access. And then to the left of the climate controls is your gear shift. It's actually a dial located on the dash itself. This is a little weird at first, but after you drive the truck for a day or two, it's actually pretty enjoyable. I like that you don't have to lean over and reach for a gear shift. You just gently reach onto the dash, give it a very gentle turn, and you're in a different gear. It's, I don't know. It sold me. It's actually pretty nice. And then directly below the gear shift are the controls to switch between four-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, etc. Nice big buttons, so they're really easy to operate. And then another thing I want to mention in this general area is that you have a number of power ports here. So on the right-hand side, kind of by the climate controls, you actually have a three-pronged power port. So you can pretty much plug in anything right here, which is awesome. Below there is a USB port. And then on the left side, by the gear shift, a little bit below there, you have another DC power port that's in the form of an old cigarette lighter, so you will need an adapter for that one. And then located near all these power ports is a kind of a pull-out shelf that you can use to store all your electronics. It's made out of plastic, so it doesn't feel great, but it's definitely big enough to store anything you're going to need to charge while you're driving this truck. Well, maybe that's not true. That's kind of an assumption. If you do have bigger items, thankfully in the same general area, you do have 2 glove boxes. And neither of these is huge, especially the one on top. It's a little bit small and shallow, but it's still nice to have these extra storage spaces to keep all your odds and ends. And don't worry if you have even more stuff, because there's additional storage underneath the, well, it's not a center armrest. I guess what I should say is that the middle seat folds down to create a center armrest, and then you can open that up to find some additional storage space. Also, in front of that area, kind of on the floor, there's some additional storage that you can use to organize some of your smaller items. All right, so that's all of pretty much the major highlights from the front seat. Let's jump in the back seat and take a look at what kind of amenities your passengers are going to get to enjoy. First off, legroom back here is great. I'm 6 feet tall and I still have plenty of space between my knees and the driver's seat, even with that driver's seat pushed back a good distance. I'd say I have maybe, 4 to 6 inches, which is pretty good, especially for a truck. And I'm not sure if you noticed, but there are some, I think you could call them pockets on the back of the front seats. These don't feel great. They feel a little bit cheap, but it is nice to have a little bit of extra storage back here. Also, towards the floor, kind of on the bottom of that center armrest for the front seat passengers, you do have 2 dedicated vents, which is another nice touch. And then there's also a center armrest that folds down from the middle seat and reveals 2 nice-sized cup holders. Above the rear window, there's also a light that helps illuminate the cabin, and then 2 hooks, which I'm assuming are for your jackets. I tried to hang my jacket back here, but I didn't really like the placement because it ends up blocking most of the rear window and really limits your visibility quite a bit. But anyway, probably the most impressive feature back here is that these back seats do fold up, and it's super easy to convert the truck like this. I was able to do it one-handed, first try holding a camera without any effort at all. When you do fold the seats forward, I guess up is more accurate, there's some additional metal foldable pieces down here. I'm not really sure how to describe them, but what they accomplished is that they create a flatter surface back here for you to store some larger items. And then if you keep digging, you can actually fold those metal foldable pieces, for lack of a better term, upwards, and it reveals some additional storage. All in all, it's a pretty cool feature and one that I like quite a bit. But anyway, that's pretty much everything back here. Let's close things out by taking a look at the bed of this pickup truck. Now, I didn't haul anything with this pickup truck, so take my opinion with a grain of salt, but I do think this whole area looks pretty good. It's a nice rectangular shape, and the wheel wells only infringe on the space just a little bit. There's also a number of hooks back here that will make it easy to tie things down. And I did actually jump in the back and played around with the material that lines the bed, and it feels pretty solid, something that could take a little bit of abuse before it's going to break. But again, I'm sorry, I just wasn't able to use this pickup as a pickup as part of my review, so you might want to maybe take a look at this yourself before you form an opinion. But let's close things out by looking kind of down below. First off, you get dual exhaust, which is great to see. There's also a trailer hitch here, which is fantastic, and then the hookups for the trailer hitch are located just above to the left of the license plate. Both of these look like they're made out of really solid materials, so I don't think they're going to fall apart anytime soon. And then lastly, the spare tire is located underneath the bed of the truck, tucked underneath, I think in a good spot. I bet you could reach that pretty easily without any trouble if you do get a flat. All right, so that's pretty much everything end-to-end on the 2018 Ram 1500 Bighorn Crew Cab 5.7 liter Hemi V8. Really is a mouthful. Anyway, I was lucky enough to have this truck, I always say car, but I was lucky enough to have this truck for 4 solid days. I put a ton of miles on this vehicle. Gotta be honest, the first day I didn't love it so much, but as every subsequent day passed, I started to love this truck more and more and more. It really is a blast to drive. It's smooth, it's quiet, it's enjoyable. I kind of miss it, to be honest. Anyway, after all that time behind the wheel, I think what you should be asking me at this point in the video is, would I recommend this truck to you? Yes or no? Yes, I mean clearly yes. Look, I love the Ram 1500. This is a solid truck, A little pricey coming at over $40,000, but I don't know. If you're in the market for something big and powerful like this, I think I'd take this one out for a spin. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Anyway, that's it for now. Thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you join me next time when I review my 95th rental car. I'll see you then.